Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and today we are going to take another look at Mars's square to Neptune. And we're going to do it by looking at one of my favorite texts and a couple of really cool passages and descriptions that come from one of my favorite astrological cookbooks called The Archetypal Universe by Ren Butler. I like this as a desk reference. It is something that I often go to as a way of just kind of conjuring up images and themes that help me understand a transit. And I was rereading the passage on Mars Neptune today and just thinking, this would be great to go over some of this with you, to point you to someone's work that I really like, who you may also enjoy if you haven't ever checked him out before. And yeah, to get a little deeper read on this aspect, which is perfecting now, and not only now, but through the retrograde process, which Mars will begin at the end of this month. Mars will station at the late Gemini, about 25 degrees, turn retrograde and back into the square with Neptune again. In fact, it's stationing really in a square with Neptune. So this is going to be around really all the way through November. And I thought, let's take another dive with a dive into the watery Mars Neptune combination. It's an interesting thing to even consider a watery Mars. But I think there's some really rich material in this passage today. So I'm going to read through it and hopefully riff off from a bunch of things that Ren has to say about Mars Neptune. So before we get into it, like and subscribe if you haven't already. Really helps the channel to grow. Drop a comment in the comment section. If you have a story to share, use the hashtag grabbed. If you have a way in which you can share a story about how Mars and Neptune has showed up in your life recently, please do share it. Use the hashtag grabbed and then tell your story. Keep the story short and sweet, or email it to us, grabbed@nightlightastrology.com. Don't share anything that you aren't comfortable with me sharing in a future video, grabbed episode series that I'll likely do in the next month or so. And we appreciate those stories coming in. Don't forget that right now, my new class, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic, is also about to start in November. It's coming up really soon. We still have plenty of space available in the course. I'm going to take you over there right now. Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic, my first year program, begins on November 12th. You can learn more about it on the website, nightlightastrology.com. And when you get there, click on the first year course, scroll down, and you can learn everything that there is to know about the course, including its start date. Again, that's November 12th. It's on Saturdays, 2 to 3 hours each class, from noon to about 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern. A lot of people take the course remotely if you can't make it live for the webinars. They're all cataloged for you on a course website that you have access to, and you can keep everything there. You have lifetime access. You can go at your own pace and watch the videos as you can if you can't make them live. There's some video there. You can see what the alumni have had to say about it. There's a lot of really good benefits in the program. The thing that I am most proud of with the program is the way that every lesson contains a lot of support, extra reading if you want to, bonus lectures, quizzes, flashcards. You have a discussion forum with a staff of tutors that are there to answer questions within a day. You can email me with questions anytime. We also have breakout study sessions. We're going to spend, 10 hours on just talking about the ancient esoteric meaning of the houses and where they first came from, and how do we use them artfully and intuitively in readings, or the planets, or the houses, or the signs, or the aspects, or dignities. And not only just how to use them, but where do they come from, and what was the spiritual purpose behind any of these things in the first place? Learning that for most people is like a skeleton key that gives you access to your intuition rather than just memorizing a list of adjectives or topics or something like that. And as you go along, you can, we in between big units like that, we have breakout study sessions with staff where you can come and ask all the questions that you might have. So it's really a program that is there to help you start a professional astrology practice or reading charts for other people. But also, a lot of people take the program just because it's really good to deepen your connection to astrology. If it's something that you love and you find it really helpful, there's nothing more helpful than being able to read your own chart. Not that we're able, you always need help and friends and new insights. I'm always learning new things about my chart, but the kind of insight that I have, being able to read my chart, family members and friends' charts, and obviously being able to start a practice. The thing is that astrology is growing more popular too. So there's really no shortage of people who are becoming interested in it every year. It's a booming career field and industry right now that is taking off. And that's straight talk. I'm not just making that up to sell the program. If you want to become an astrologer, it's right now is a time when a lot of people are getting interested in it, which is really good for us as astrologers. And for me, it's also about trying to prepare a new generation of people to bring this forward, this material forward, and, teach other people. Okay, so at the bottom of the screen, you can pick a payment or enrollment option. There's the early bird payment that saves you $500 off. Take advantage of that to save some really good money on the tuition. There's a monthly payment plan you can spread out over 12 months. That may help you a little bit as well. And then we have need-based tuition. And that is for people who, for whatever reason, can't make it. I had someone write me today saying, I really want to take it, but I'm guessing I don't qualify because both me and my husband have a job. And then they went on to say, the issue is we have children and a tight budget. We don't make a ton of money and everything's really tight every month. No, that's exactly who this is for, right? It doesn't, if you're without a job or part-time employed or a single parent, you're on disability, we want to help people like that for sure. But we're also just there to help people who are on a tight budget, right? And you want to take an astrology program that's really immersive, well-structured, really well supported. But you need a little help to get there. That's what it's for. We make this, that option is literally so that people who are in that exact situation can take advantage of it and are not priced out of a spiritual, an education in a spiritual topic that anyone should really have access to learn, in my humble opinion. So check it out. If you have any questions, email us info@nightlightastrology.com. All right, so let's take a look at the Mars-Neptune transit. Here it is again. And Mars is... You can see Mars squaring Neptune perfectly. This is about 1:38 a.m. New York East Coast time, October 12th, so early Wednesday morning. But you should have been feeling, we did a video on this last week, and the likelihood is that you've already been feeling this energy or noticing it for a while, and you will continue to notice this energy for a while because it's got a shelf life. Let's just draw this out a tiny bit. In fact, let me share my screen again and show you. So this transit, keep your eye on Mars and Neptune now. Actually, maybe I can draw it in here so that you can actually see it. It's going to move. So you know what? Here's what I'll do. Oops. Let's do this, and I'll share it again. So watch Mars and Neptune. You're going to see, first of all, that Mars by October 31st, they're about stations. You see a little S under Mars, and then it turns retrograde. And then after it retrogrades, it's going to come back through the square to Neptune, which it does by mid to late November. And then it's going to keep going for a while, but it is within 3 degrees of Neptune all the way till the end of November. That 3-degree engagement range is really important. And then finally, through its direct motion, it comes back through the square mid to late March. So it is the Mars retrograde is really also the story of Mars's square to Neptune. Here are some of the things that Ren Butler has to say, which I find really on point, and I'd like to, I'll read, but also elaborate upon. So Mars Neptune, now this comes from his book, again, The Archetypal Universe, which I couldn't recommend more highly. Ren is a colleague, and I consider him a kindred spirit. Really like the way that he opens up the archetypal dimensions of planetary combinations and just sort of spins the jewel, letting the light catch off from it in different directions. Spiritual and creative vitality. So I like that he says spiritual and creative vitality. There's a sense it's as though Mars is being bounced off of the imaginative, prismatic, uplifting qualities of Neptune and feels vitalized and fresh, like a warrior who's just been baptized or something. Magnetic warmth and charisma. There's a sense of charm. Like, for example, did you know that the magician as an archetype has often been related to Mars Neptune? Liz Green famously related Mars and Neptune to the magician archetype. Someone who has the ability to, it's like, at worst, it might be smoke and mirrors and deception and tricks, but at best, it's showmanship and inspiration and magic and sort of creative, like David Copperfield. A gentle and sensitive strength. So you're taking strength and you're making it more subtle, gentle, compassionate. That's the combination of Mars and Neptune. Gifts of compassionate action and enlightened non-action. Knowing when to act and to do so from a space of deep empathy or compassion. That's the Mars-Neptune quality. But also maybe realizing that right now I need to surrender something, or my will I need to let go of the desire I have, or it's like, the strong, assertive, aggressive qualities of Mars sort of lay back and say, I'm letting go of an action. Strange feelings of pointlessness and futility. Now, that can be the frustration of Mars with Neptune. I talked about that a little bit last week when I talked about weakness and feeling inept or impotent. Toxic blah malaise. Yeah, the feeling that nothing's really working or nothing really means anything. Uncomfortable inner heat. There's one thing that's really interesting about Mars Neptune is anything that's sort of irritating, like a rash that's almost psychosomatic, or being influenced and irritated or agitated, Mars qualities, by very subtle things in the environment. Very Mars Neptune. The potential for secret harmful action. So Mars Neptune becomes the action that is harmful, Mars, but also deceptive or secretive, which is Neptune. Camouflaged desires. Yeah, being able to sort of cloak some kind of desire or something like that. Character and themes: gentle and sensitive strength, and open and flexible resilience, a capacity to go with the flow, very Mars-like martial arts. Softened ego energies, relaxed confidence. I like that one. That feels very Mars Neptune. Like if you see someone who's really, really, I heard someone once say this when I was into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for a little bit last summer. Someone said, why do people who, do these, they're extraordinarily competitive, sort of violent sports, but they seem so laid back, almost like surfers, which, by the way, surfing, a competitive sport associated with Mars Neptune. And the answer is like, yeah, well, if you get close to being tapped out often, or you're tapping other people out, or you're in combat zones, it's like there's not a lot to be afraid of or to be stressed out about. If you're taking it to that level of intensity, like oddly, it makes you kind of relaxed. That's very like the warrior code of Mars Neptune. It's like relaxed confidence, but it's not one that is necessarily a stranger to like violence or trauma either. The ability to have an effect without arousing opposition. That's a good one. The softest things in the world overcome the hardest things. Quote from Lao Tzu. A feeling of synergy with others, gifts of compassionate action, right action, and enlightened non-action. The ideal of being in the world but not of it, acting without attachment to the results, service to those less fortunate, blends of passion and faith, quiet crusades. My experience has been that Mars Neptune can also be quite loud with its crusades, quite almost like driven by a zeal for some kind of transcendent vision or mission. The futility, an ability to gently follow and stay with one's breathing. You must learn to be still in the midst of activity and to be vibrantly alive in repose. That's a quote from Indira Gandhi. The futility of war, the transmuting of aggression, dissolution of force, active passivism, passive resistance, the soft martial arts. It'd be like Qigong, I guess. Sensitive passion, sacred sexuality. I think that part's really interesting. Mars, sometimes we think of only as like violence or aggression, but Mars is also desire and passion. And so with Neptune, there can be a sanctifying or a making sacred of one's desires and passions. Oceanic sex, tantra, the sacredness of energy and movement, a talent for swimming. So I grew up with I have a Mars-Neptune opposition, and I was a competitive swimmer from the time I was a little kid. A love of soaking in hot water. Oh, I think that one's interesting. That's funny because I've always been like a sucker for hot tubs too. I wonder if that's why. But so you can feel some of the Mars Neptune combinations, and I think it's just about one of the things that helps about doing this is just doing one yourself, making a list yourself. One of the benefits of doing content creation every day is that you make lists, or you read lists, or you familiarize yourself with the archetypal combinations, and you're speaking them all the time. And so they just become part of your vocabulary. Then it's easier to spot them and notice them because they never pop up in quite the way you're expecting them to. Like I wouldn't be surprised. Actually, it's funny. Mars squaring as Mars has grown closer to a square with Neptune, there's been a problem with the gentle depression lever on the cover of our little hot tub that we have. And so we need to get it replaced. That's funny. I wasn't even thinking about that. See, that's what I mean. All right. Shadow qualities. A demoralizing sense of futility and pointlessness, weakness and lack of confidence, inability to take decisive action and not being up to life's challenges, unfocused or stalled willpower, procrastination. That's certainly there. The ineptitude, the weakness, the failure that we talked about in last week's video on Mars Neptune. Vague and diffuse irritation. See, that's the weird thing, is that there's almost like this hyper allergic response, like Mars Neptune I've seen in people who like strangely get shingles and they can't figure out why. Threats. This is funny. Threats from tiny organisms. So it's like ants or something, like a fire ant would be very Mars Neptune. Rashes and itching. Spiritual or religious ambition. This is a shadow quality. So like striving to achieve enlightenment with maybe some kind of hubris involved. Misguided spiritual aspiration, ego trips based on questionable, subtle, or energetic healing. Mars Neptune, for example, I've had that transit come up in the past when when I was working at a residence home for adults who, were dealing with schizophrenia. And the Mars Neptune combination, when I worked there as a social worker, I noticed on several occasions when one of my residents who I worked with had some really, really intense, like religious delusions that were, really scary, because, sometimes the decompensation that comes with those can result in someone harming themselves. I noticed, because I was starting to study astrology, that there was one of those times, at least I remember, that Mars Neptune was perfecting. So you have to be careful about that. The potential to confuse people and the delusion of hurting others in order to wake them up. Wow, that's a good one. I remember that I had a coach, and I'll just leave it at that. I won't say which sport, but I had a coach that really had this sense that I'm hurting you to help you. And it always left a bad taste in my mouth. It's just like, this isn't right. And yeah, that's a really good one for Mars Neptune. Backstabbing and treachery, stealth and cunning. See, that sense of like secretly harming someone, secretly stealing something like that, that strikes me as potentially problematic. Suicide is mentioned. Let's see, poisoning or problems with liquids that harm. Yeah. Nature and the arts, the mournful consciousness of predators. Wow. Stealthy hunters. In cinema, actors who portray subtle, sensitive, unassuming, exotic, mysterious, magnetic, and charismatic characters. Also strange, bizarre, uncanny, sly, wily, oily, shifty, or sneaky characters. Yeah, those definitely some Mars Neptune would be. If you guys remember the Lord of the Rings, there was Wormwood, who had influenced and poisoned the mind of the king. What was his name? Theoden. Very Mars Neptune like character. In fact, Gollum, Schmeagol, he's a very Mars Neptune like character in the way he's always sneaking around and tries to and he almost leads them into a trap with a spider. It's very Mars Neptune in that sense. But I don't want to make it sound like it's all just treachery, villainy, and evil, because there's certainly more to it than that. But any of the kind of like the glamorization or romanticization of horror, like the appeal of watching a docu-series on a serial killer or something, very Mars Neptune. This would be an interesting one to have it popping around Halloween, by the way. The Taoist virtue of Wu Wei, or creative quietude, the watercourse way. Truth strength comes from being open to the flow of divine energy and consciousness. The Tao, the ideal of turning the other cheek. That's a really interesting one. Mars Neptune as passive, a passive resistance. Be strong by, in a sense, not non-action or detachment, and there's a kind of strength in that. a lot of martial arts work not so much by asserting something as using an opponent's anger, rage, or aggression against them as a leverage point, stalking the absolute, entering into the mystery, sacrificing one's ego into the great dissolver. All of it has a kind of extreme sport feeling behind it with spirituality, like I'm driving toward oblivion like a skydiver or something. So anyway, I'll leave it there. But the last thing he says that's interesting, themes and deep self-exploration. These archetypes help people to take a break from their usual martial or forceful approach to life and go with the flow of their emerging inner material. Mars-Neptune transits are also an asset for clearing out leftover toxic womb memories or disturbances of intrauterine life. That's fascinating. Now, that comes a little bit from the work that Butler and his lineage of teachers did, like Stanislav Grof, with the sort of birthing matrix of the archetypes associated with the birthing process, which is a big part of that holotropic breath work and things like that. But at any rate, a wonderful passage from Ren, and one that I think gives us a lot to think about with Mars Neptune, just feeling it, trying to bring the God into our awareness a little bit. I recommend putting something on a home altar if you have one, something that could be a tribute to Mars Neptune. I mean, it can get creative too. And I love doing this kind of thing. Like, take a, okay, I'm really literally going to make something up right now. Let's see. Take a sharp knife. I know this sounds probably like a bad idea, but even if you just do it for a couple of days, take a sharp knife and put it into a jar full of water, right? Something that's kind of signifies the symbol. And a lot of the times when you come up with something creative like that, it's not like you're asking for something from it. It's just a simple recognition of the gods that are sort of in the air. If you put it on the altar, it just has a funny way of starting to alert you to the presence of the god. The gods start speaking in your dreams. They start giving you the messages that you might need. And they start opening you in the ways that are just right for the moment. So I highly recommend just sort of working with, even just starting with an awareness of these archetypes in a creative manner. I think it can just do wonders for, what the process brings to you and how you grow because of it. And we're having this is not just one that's, I wouldn't do this for something that's just super, super quick. This one's lasting a long time. And we've got this all the way through the end of November, then again, a reprise later on in March. So I would say it's well worth taking a minute to really tune into the Mars Neptune energies that are in the air right now. Well, and by the way, on that note, if you have a story to share, use the hashtag grabbed and put Mars Neptune. Tell us your story. I would love to hear we really need to gather some good stories for Mars Neptune. So please share them. If you don't feel like sharing it in the comment section with the hashtag grab, just email us, grabbed@nightlightastrology.com. We aggregate those and we'll probably do a storytelling episode at some point this fall. Don't forget, last thing is the Ancient Astrology program for the Modern Mystic begins on November 12th. Check out the need-based tuition option if you want to take one of the courses, but you can't afford it. Any questions, email us info@nightlightastrology.com. That's what I've got for today. Hope you guys are doing well, and we'll see you again next time.